for the conflict between organized religion and what I call human rights is the French Revolution. As you recall from history, the state and the church were separated in France as a result of the revolution. You can ask yourself, what was the form of the struggle during the revolution, the struggle between the revolutionaries or republicans and the church? The form of the struggle was that the church people were slaughtered. All the lands were taken, the property was taken, and thousands, if not more than thousands, of priests and functionaries were simply killed. I read a treatise about what happened with the church during the revolution by a Polish philosopher, Kołakowski. He wrote about this issue. And it was resolved by killing the church functionaries around the country, and the church never recovered. It became a part of the French Constitution, and it is kept this way to this day. And in the American Constitution, there was no such struggle. They started with separation. But to advance the ideas of freedom, human rights, and these slogans of the French Revolution, people needed to get rid physically of the religious establishment that kept really the tool of oppression, and they were the oppression. And when you see now how the organized religion, with those crazy rabbis and ayatollahs, all of those oppress the non-believers, you may predict that the only way to resolve the conflict between them will not be by friendly discussion and persuasion, because all of this is not predicated on understanding, but it's predicated on feelings, on beliefs. And therefore I predict that people will not submit voluntarily to a religious state when the Orthodox becomes the biggest political power, but there will be a struggle by force to recover the rights that we enjoy now, or maybe even more rights. That's why I do not believe that there will be a peaceful settlement of the conflict between religious and the ideas of free Europe and the United States, and what's called the Western civilization. Western civilization is not based on religion. It is separated from religion. There's freedom of religion, but not more. Now, I believe that ideological conflicts are settled by force. There is a YouTube movie of the signing ceremony of the surrender of Japan to General MacArthur. General MacArthur received the Japanese delegation on an American destroyer, and before sitting down to sign the unconditional surrender, he delivered a speech like this. He said this: now that the ideological conflict was settled on the battlefield, we can sign the unconditional surrender of Japan. It was the ideological conflict that was settled in the war, not any economical conflict or national conflict. It was an ideological conflict. And I believe that this was the same also as Germany. Germany was fighting for ideology, and the free world was fighting for ideology, and the Russians were fighting for ideology. Everybody was fighting for ideology, and the ideological conflict was settled by force. And I believe that my prediction is that the new, or not so new, conflict with a religion will again be settled by force. And it will be a bloody mess.
And you predict this will be all over the world?
At least in certain parts of the world. For example, in Europe, I don't believe people will be willing to go down and submit to fanaticism without putting up a fight. For example, the way, the white settlers in Rhodesia gave up without a fight. And also in South Africa, they relinquished power without putting up a fight. But I think that, say, in 50 years, the birth rate of the Muslims will really change the balance, the ethnic balance or religious balance in Europe. And it doesn't look like that the Muslims are absorbing Western values. There is tremendous influence of the religious leaders, and the extremism is, or what we perceive as extremism is spreading. It's not decreasing. And it is bound to end up with some form of violent resolution. Maybe not in Sweden, but in England and in France and in Holland, in Italy. I predict it will end up with violence.
But you say, when you say violence, it's not like sporadic violence. You are talking about something
about cutting people's heads off. Maybe there'll be a comeback of the guillotine or something. It may be violence on the streets. We saw what violence means in Africa. And not only in one case in Africa.
But Europe is not Africa.
It is. It is. European, in my opinion, are as violent and as aggressive as in Africa. Only maybe the trigger is harder. It takes a bit longer time.
And you said that in Sweden you will not see anything like this. Why is that?
They'll submit to the... See, the immigration into Sweden is so large that it doesn't matter that, it may not matter that their birth rate is so much lower than that of the Muslims. Immigration is going to cut them down. While in Europe, that is trying to curb immigration, the birth rate may change the balance and therefore also the political power. And when there'll be legislation, the way nowadays there are attempts for anti-Muslim legislation, like the ban on wearing the hijab in public. At a certain point, when balance shifts, there'll be legislation in the opposite direction, as we see in Israel, where the religious parties press more and more for legislation, and they also pass this legislation to impose religious laws. And at a certain point, the people will say enough is enough. Now, I don't think that the religious fanatics are going to relent on anything that they're demanding or doing, because they're fanatics. And it will be resolved by force, the way MacArthur said. The religious differences were settled on the battlefield, not by mutual understanding. There is a form of mutual understanding. If one understands that the other side is going to punch him in the nose, this increases the understanding between people. Understanding is not only talking, it's understanding the realities. In a free society, the prediction that you're saying about the influence of technology is probably accurate. The technology will change everything. But before technology changes everything, I think the sociological forces may change it in a different direction. This is my prediction.
And there's a prediction for tomorrow, for in 10 years, 20 years?
In 50 years, I think that something will, violent will break out between religious establishments or religious forces and the lay people. I'll give you an example of what we should expect in the future. After the revolution in Egypt, that the military government was put down, the force that is dominating is the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood is a strongly religious group. The Muslim Brotherhoods are the ones who assassinated President Sadat about 20 years ago. They are very violent, and they are the precursors of Al-Qaeda and of the jihad. So it is clear that in this Muslim society, the extremism is taking over. And the way things are going in Europe may predict that what is happening in Egypt now will happen in Europe in 50 years, or maybe sooner. Now, in Egypt, there are no forces that can fight back, because there are not enough progressive forces